representing the Minister of Education, Skills, Youth and Information, Mr. Tivhonali Thai, First Secretary, Political, South African High Commissioner to Jamaica, Antigua, Bahamas, Haiti, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Professor Johannes Adria Smith, Head Humanities Institute, University of KwaZulu-Natal, our guest speaker, Professor Simon Galicio Kumalo, Dean and Head of the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics, University of KwaZulu-Natal, Ms. Maxine Henry Wilson, former Minister of Education and Dean of the Faculty of Education, Michael University, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. With allowance made for my mispronunciations at points, I wish to welcome us all to this event, a partnership event between the International University of the Caribbean and the University of the West Indies. Partnerships are central to the strategy of the University of the West Indies as it seeks to influence the development of the Caribbean and advance the global agenda for development justice. The SDG goals has as its 17th goal partnership as a central element of development. And the University of the West Indies is gung-ho and bullish about promoting partnerships. It's against that background that we were happy to join with the International University of the Caribbean to host this lecture to be given by Professor Johannes Andreas Smith as he talks about the relationship between African philosophy and higher education. The university's global strategy for development justice is to be seen through the eyes of one of our newest undertakings, the establishment of the International School for Development Justice, the ISDJ. The ISDJ will come on stream fully in 2025. It will be the first online global school dedicated to development justice. This initiative, pioneered by our Vice Chancellor, has been supported by the United Nations and other agencies and is being carried out in partnership with other universities. We will always be welcoming new partners to this agenda for development justice. And this evening's conversation, to be led by our colleague, Professor Smith, will speak to one component of development justice, which is the role of tertiary education in development. It's against the background of recognizing the partnership between our respective agendas, the affirmation of the importance of justice in right-sizing and right-weighing the world, that I welcome you, and at this time would call upon Professor Roderick Hewitt, the President of IUC, to bring greetings. And just in case you forgot, I'm Canoe Thompson, PVC for undergraduate studies. Thank you. Professor Hewitt.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed an honor to be here and to be in partnership with the University of the West Indies, hosting these eminent scholars from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. We are here today to celebrate the global impact of African scholarship. And what better way to do so than to have representatives from one of the main universities on the African continent to be with us today. We will introduce them a little later, especially our keynote speaker, but we have with us as a part of the delegation, Professor Khumalo, Simangaliso Khumalo. We at the International University of the Caribbean view this as a strategic partnership. We invited them to be here with us because, especially since the period of COVID, the global educational landscape has radically changed. We have seen not only where students are having greater access to global education, but much more than that. There is a great challenge about the kind of perspectives that are being used to inform the governance in our world today. We believe that this university that has pioneered a lot of research work on the continent, it is indeed the right time for such a university to become part of the wider Jamaican landscape. Since their arrival in Jamaica, we have introduced them to, well, naturally, to the South African High Commissioner or the network of South Africans in Jamaica. That for us is important because, as we were told, Jamaica became the first nation in the world to stand up against the apartheid policies soon after independence. And this connectivity with South Africa is pertinent for such a time as this. We have introduced them also to the Ministry of Education, for which we're happy that Dr. Benjamin is with us to listen to this lecture. We have taken time out also to link them with the University Council of Jamaica, because everything that we seek to do must be above board. And here we are. We know that having the University of KwaZulu-Natal with us is still bigger than IUC. That's why we're here with the University of the West Indies, because we recognize also the wider global impact of the University of the West Indies. So today, we invite you who are here with us physically, along with those who will link up with UWI Connect and around the wider Caribbean region. We want to ensure that we welcome you, and we thank this Mona campus, the principal, and all the other leaders of the university through the Pro-Vice Chancellor in charge of global affairs. They welcomed us, and we are pleased today on this 20th day, in this afternoon as the sun goes down with us, to be listening to our brothers representing the wider network of the African continent who will speak to us. So, Pro-Vice Chancellor, thank you very much for welcoming us and for having us, receiving us for this joint lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and may you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much, Professor Hewitt. I'd like to welcome our other guests who have just arrived. Dr. Tamika Benjamin, sitting in the front. She is representing the minister. As I indicated earlier, she is the Assistant Chief Education Officer. I'd also want to welcome and acknowledge my very good friends, Professor Disraeli Hutton, who is with both the UWI as well as with IUC. And beside him sitting is Dr. Elvis Hewitt-Buckle from IUC. I wanted to tell you a little thing about the university, which was inspired in my thoughts as I listened to Professor Hewitt, talking about the reach and the relevance of the UWI. It's a message I've been carrying for the last couple of weeks for good reason. The UWI is among the top 5% of the best universities in the world. Thank you. This has been reaffirmed once again by the Times Higher Education ranking. This was the case in 2018 when we first entered the rankings. And although the criteria have been modified, where the weighting has shifted from global citations, the heaviest weighting has shifted from global citations to industry partnerships, and thereby favoring large universities with mega dollars to be able to influence policy and work with large businesses. Although there have been those changes, the UWI, notwithstanding slippage in the categories, remains in the top 5%. So when you talk about the UWI, you're talking about a globally ranked university in the top 5% of the best in the world. With that, I want to acknowledge other colleagues from the UWI community who have joined us. Dr. John Lindo, Dr. Alison Fong, and who else am I missing? I'll recognize others as we go. At this time, I'd like to invite our host, Dr. Tomlin Paul, the Deputy Principal for the Mona campus, to come and bring greetings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, PVC Kenyon Thompson, or PVC for Undergraduate Board for Undergraduate Studies, Professor Roderick Hewitt, President of the International University of the Caribbean, Honorable Ambassador Luna Samba, Chancellor of the International University of the Caribbean, Her Excellency Lumka Yenjini, South African High Commissioner for Jamaica, Antigua, Belize, Bahamas, Haiti, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Professor Johannes Smith, Head of Humanities Institute, University of KwaZulu-Natal, our guest speaker, our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Simangaliso Kumalo, Dean and Head of School, Religion, Philosophy and Classics, University of KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Tamika Benjamin, Assistant Chief Education Officer, Tertiary Education, Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, representing our Minister, our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Global Affairs, Ms. Sandria Maynard, who is here virtually, who is attending virtually, Dr. Maxine Henry Wilson, a former Minister of Education. It's good to see you. Welcome. Other distinguished guests and members who are here with us this afternoon, members of the International University of the Caribbean and members of the University of the West Indies, Mona, our online viewers, good afternoon. I'm really delighted and very happy to bring you greetings this afternoon. And I want to say first an apology from our Principal Denzel Williams, who is unable to attend but sends his very kind regards and blessings for a good evening and a good occasion. As the International University of the Caribbean and the University of KwaZulu-Natal joins in this partnership here, we are so happy to be host of the event this evening. And for this special lecture, I must especially welcome our professors, Professor Smith, Professor Kumalo, I trust that you are enjoying the good culture and the nice warm weather that we are now having in Jamaica, and all of the lovely things that Jamaica is well known for, from the food to the sea, to the beaches. The vision for our UE system is to be a global university rooted in the Caribbean. I so much love that vision. It's short and simple, but it's very powerful. A global university rooted in the Caribbean. And we are fast becoming that, I would say. PVC, Thompson may well say we're already there. But these kind of meetings and events, as we have this evening, between KwaZulu-Natal, International University of the Caribbean, ourselves, this kind of partnership and this meeting really is a celebration of the kind of sentiments that we like to express as a global university. And global, some may argue, begins at home. So, Professor Hubert, it is so good also to have our partnership right here on the land, right here in Jamaica, as well as extending the arm of fellowship, academic fellowship, to KwaZulu-Natal. So we're very much very happy to be a part of this, this collaboration. This collaboration, which seeks to impact Western scholarship through the Caribbean-African Partnership, has students pursuing master's and doctoral studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. The Caribbean-African Partnership, these partnerships are strong, and they have a lot of potential for growth and development. And we see some of the reasons for that. We share a lot in common. Our historical footprints and pathways are often very similar. We can find synergy across the continents and across the regions in terms of our history. Indeed, the University of KwaZulu-Natal is one of the top universities on the African continent, as you heard Prof. saying, providing leadership in research, innovation, and community engagement. We also have universities in our region that are also really much at the top in the work that they do in terms of scholarship and research. And our very own IUC and UE are in that region. We had this morning on the campus, our campus is still a little busy. If you drove just coming in here, you'd see we were celebrating World Geography Month, and World Geography focusing on geospatial engineering. And I had the pleasure of speaking this morning at that event. And it was just, I reminded them that when I went to high school, one of the heaviest books in my school bag was my geography book. It was the Atlas. Remember that? That Atlas, one of the heaviest books. Lots of pages, you turn, colorful maps upon maps upon maps. And it was so wonderful. I think I still have mine at home. You don't want to throw away books like those. Even though we now have Google Map and Google Doc and all these sort of click and you find where you're going. But it really brings back a reflection of how connected we are when we talk about maps and looking at understanding the geography of the world. So this kind of relationship here is very special for us. As we go forward, we are excited about the possibilities. With the winds of change that have been sweeping across the globe, it is more than fitting and timely for us to have this discourse this afternoon on repositioning African scholarship in higher education. As our academics across the continent continue to innovate, it is with open minds that we welcome you, Prof. Smith, and the team to champion the cause of repositioning African scholarship. The conversation is as necessary as it provides an opportunity for us to explore matters relating to international heritage, intellectual heritage, curriculum development, international collaborations, and I can go on and on. But let me stop here and say, what better place to have this discourse than right here at the Mona campus, and with a diverse cross-section of faculty and students promoting thought leadership. As you settle in and listen to Prof. Smith's presentation, let us think about how we can work together to push the boundaries of knowledge and to have a lasting impact on the global stage that we are all a member of at this point. Welcome again, and we look forward to this special lecture and the discourse around it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Paul. This time I invite Dr. Tamika Benjamin to bring greetings. Let's welcome her.
Pro-Vice Chancellor Thompson, Professor Hewitt, and other representatives from the International University of the Caribbean, the delegation from South Africa, colleagues all, good afternoon. It's my sincere pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information on this public lecture. The visit of the delegation from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa and the partnership with the International University of the Caribbean are timely as the ministry continues to work to strengthen and improve the higher education sector in Jamaica, as guided by the recommendations in the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's report. These recommendations fall under Pillar 4 of the implementation plan, which is now shaping the work of the tertiary unit, the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, the University Council of Jamaica, and the Council of Community Colleges of Jamaica. Together, we are making a concerted effort to reshape the local higher education context so that it is able to create and provide a wide range of learning opportunities, which will support the development of a workforce which is able to respond to the ever-changing needs of the global context in which we all live and work, and to support Jamaica in realizing its national development goals. Critical to advancing this will not just be the development of a robust governance framework for the development and implementation for the development of the sector, or the implementation of a funding model to ensure the effective use of the significant resources now being pumped into the sector. But we will also need to ensure that we are shaping a sector which provides Jamaicans with access to learning opportunities, which can strengthen the cultural competencies of our people so that they are able to adapt to a range of contexts, hone their critical thinking skills, which are important for understanding and navigating cultural differences, provide a global perspective so that they can consider the impact of their actions on a larger scale, and develop stronger interpersonal skills, becoming more open to views and ideas of others. But we also need to establish global partnerships, not just within the Caribbean context, but with institutions in other contexts, as these are a valuable and time-tested tool for supporting the development of knowledge which is relevant to the realities of both contexts. The ministry therefore supports and encourages the formation of partnerships for learning, such as that fostered between the International University of the Caribbean and the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and therefore extends a warm welcome to the delegation from South Africa to Jamaica. We hope that this will be the beginning of many other such partnerships within the sector, and trust that the experiences learned will be shared widely so that others may be encouraged to seek out and establish similar relationships with institutions across the world. Engagement in discussions and lectures such as this one will certainly stimulate further thought and discussion on such an important topic. We wish for all an engaging evening and trust that the fruit borne will benefit Jamaica for years to come. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Benjamin. We use the word university, but I submit that it is a misconstruction of what we are seeking to do when we engage in dialogue about our various ideas. We have here today, for example, the International University of the Caribbean, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and the UWI, and I suspect there may be persons from other universities, Michael University, in the audience. So I'm drawn to the construction pluriversity to describe the breadth and depth and diversity of our experiences, our perspectives, and our approaches to generating knowledge. It is with the notion that we are pluriversal, diverse, multifaceted, and complex that I want to now invite Professor Disraeli Hutton. Changes to my instructions. Invite Professor Roderick Hewitt to introduce our speaker from all the way in Africa. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to the topic that for the next 20 to 30 minutes you will be fixed. Epistemic conceptual excellence and contextual relevance in Afrocentric scholarship and research in the era of digitech and AI. A mouthful. I introduce to you Professor Johannes Smith. Professor Smith is a full professor of religion and social transformation. He's chair of the Humanities Institute in the College of Humanities. The University of KwaZulu-Natal has five colleges. So I should have mentioned to Prof. Kanu that this is also a celebration of the humanities. Yep, in a world that has shifted fundamentally the gears and celebrating science, technology, and management, we are saying that humanities still central in the formation of the human being. So, Prof. Johannes Smith heads he's a chair of the Institute of Humanities. He was a former dean of the School of Religion, Philosophy, and Classics, also the dean for the School of Arts. He's well known on the African continent as he's the editor and still operates this well-known global journal called Alternations, African Scholarship. And this is one of the top journals, not only on the African continent, but the wider journal world. He has a lifelong commitment to transformative humanities and the social science knowledge generation. He works in interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary learning. And so Yanni has been president of the Association of Religion, the Study of Religion in Southern Africa, editor-in-chief for the Journal for the Study of Religion in Southern Africa. He teaches comparative religion and is the founder of the postgraduate program in religion and social transformation. The program has so far graduated over 300 postgraduate students since 2000, when he stepped down as a program director. Today, as one of the main professors in the College of Humanities, he's here to ensure that as the keynote presenter of the special lecture today, we will indeed welcome one of South Africa's great sons and an excellent researcher from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Professor Johannes Smith.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's great to be with you and to be welcomed like this. Somebody recently returning from Jamaica said that they experienced Jamaica, IUC, University of West Indies as home away from home. I've been here 2 days, and it's my same, I have the same experience. So thank you so much. Colleagues, then I want to just thank the Pro-Vice Chancellor. Pro-Vice Chancellor, thank you so much for your welcoming words and for all the presentations, brief presentations, but really hitting the nerves on all the keys. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It's really very, very important that we put our minds together, share ideas and share data, empirical data in our societies and from our societies, and collaboratively work on African scholarship. And I'm so grateful that I hear this repetition of African scholarship. That's what we are all about as scholars, that count Africa as our place of rootedness, cultural rootedness, geographical rootedness, and how it inspires us towards the future. And in terms of knowledge generation, the epistemic future not only of Africa, but of the world. So it is a great honor for me to be here today, to be welcomed by our dear friend and excellent scholar himself, Prof. Roderick Hewitt, dear friend and excellent scholar also, Professor Simangaliso Kumalo, and also very, very thank you so much for meeting the president of, or the chancellor of the University of the West Indies. It is a real humbling honor and really appreciate it. Thank you so much that you are here today. Colleagues, as Prof said, it is a mouthful, the topic, but I thought I'll share it because this is what we have been working on, you can say at the epistemic levels and meta-theoretical levels, thinking about these things at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And the colleagues in my networks that I form part of and that they form part of on some of my initiatives really share these ideas, and they've presented on these focuses over the last year especially, and also on digital media. And in fact, we had a digital media research group for about 15, 16 years. And the research group leader recently passed away, Professor Rembrandt Klopper, that played an immense role in really making the digital sciences part and parcel of the humanities. So many people that I do not want to mention everybody because I will leave them out. But colleagues, returning to the university, I want to share a few perspectives on some of the colleagues that I really look up to, that I'm working with. In the first place, colleagues, I want to also welcome you in this partnership on behalf of our Deputy Vice Chancellor and Head of the College of Humanities, Professor Nhlanhla Mkhize. And he has played a formative role in the university as well as in the higher education and research landscape of humanities research, humanities and social sciences and applied human sciences research. So then for it's about us. Scholarly research adventures, making unique contributions to issues relevant to current scholarly engagements. From my side, I also want to thank Professor Mkhize for his scholarly and research acumen, research-led teaching and learning, community engagement, and not least, a research-led academic institution building in which he has played such a formative role in South and Southern Africa and on the African continent. Then, with regard to today's presentation, yesterday I was introduced to the publications by Prof. Hewitt of Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, Vice-Chancellor of the University, and I was pleasantly surprised about the synergies between my own research and that of Professor Beckles. So I look forward to further collaboration. Thanks again to Professor Roderick Hewitt. I've mentioned Roderick. And then also I want to flag our interim Dean of Research that is doing immense work also in our different networks, Professor Vivian Ujong. She is a trailblazer in her own conceptually and contextually relevant research, postgraduate supervision, and international scholarly network development. Then, colleagues, let me just then make a few key points that have played a formative role in my own understanding and grappling with the matters that I raise in the topic of the presentation. Firstly, I want to reference the very important work that two scholars did and published on in 2002, Trafford and Lesham, starting at the end, and they published the book shortly thereafter on stepping stones in doctoral research. Very interestingly, in the Mediterranean world, they were examiners of PhD students in the 80s, 90s, and so on. And they try to say, if you look at the vivas where students talk about their theses and defend their theses, they have tried to 20 years' work distill what these examiners ask of the students. And, well, I will share my slides with the references. You can look at what you find interesting. But in terms of how it was expected by examiners that PhD students graduating defend their doctorateness, they had to explicitly say what is their original contribution to knowledge. Now that is part of the definition of what is required in any PhD research in South Africa. Original contribution of knowledge, original contribution to the field of specialization. It is stated in many different ways. And when I discovered the source, I found that these people from 2002, these excellent scholars, were talking the same language that we are talking. Critique of research. You can only critique existing research if you know what has been done, if you know what has been published, and so on. So, you know, some time ago, a PhD student asked me in our mentorship groups, Prof, when do I know that I've covered the field and read enough articles and books and so on, and so on? No, I said, and how, he asked me, how many must he read? I said, everything. You know, yeah, because if you want to critique scholarship, you must know everything relevant to your topic. And you must know why there is a reason for you to do this research. In other words, what is the gap in knowledge that you are trying to, and you must be explicit to say, this is my contribution to knowledge, and this is my critique of existing knowledge, and why I find certain scholars not relevant or filling the gap as I want to make it. So, to be explicit. And then conceptualizing findings. Colleagues, if we want to make original contributions to knowledge, it can only derive from something new that's coming on the table. We must bring the something new to the table. We must generate the new data that need to be considered with regard to addressing the research question or the research objective in our work. So once we know and we have generated that data or corpuses of data, then we need to report it. You can report it in different kinds of ways, but also conceptualize it. I will come back to that one. Develop conceptual frameworks, synthesizing concepts, and so on. Colleagues, then, in the remainder of my presentation, I will say something, and I will quote a seminal source on how we need to understand concepts, conceptual framework development, and then say something. I have a system that I've been lecturing on called the 10 main aspects of colonizing knowledge. In other words, so that we understand what the problematics are. And then 10 understandings of decolonizing existing knowledge. So I will say one or two things, but in my slides you will see what I have summarized there. And the big thing about, I think, these thematizations and why they are helpful is we should not understand them as binary oppositions. Because if we understand them as binary oppositions, we remain victims of colonizing knowledge. But we must have an equivalent field of research that is a kind of unique to our own contributions or original. And I will share an idea or two about that. And then finally, I will say something about the current wave of bringing more and more digital technologies into our research and artificial intelligence. Firstly, then, from an article that I have, that Professor Oliver Matapuri, when I presented on this, also told me about, and I'm grateful for Prof, called Building a Conceptual Framework, Philosophy, Definitions and Procedure. And it is extremely important for us as African scholars to see how do you do this. And the Jabadeen article provides an excellent example. And those of you, and the Provost Chancellor has mentioned philosophy, African philosophy. The study of concept and synthesizing conceptually in Africa has been immense. I'm not going into the history, but broadly speaking, from the ethno-philosophies, from the hermeneutical philosophers, from the historical, hermeneutical, and historical phenomenological philosophers, African philosophers, from the national liberation philosophers, and more recently, obviously, from the decolonial, epistemically decolonial philosophers. The concept formation and conceptualization are key to developing not only a new language, but new lenses about how we look at our own histories or our own identities, and also in terms of the challenges of the world, make substantial contributions to international knowledge. From their summary of the very famous little book by Deleuze and Guattari from 1991, I give the basic quotation there from Jabadeen. It's very, very helpful just to have a good grip of what a concept is, how do you work with concepts, and how do you develop conceptual understanding. So you can look at that. Then contextual relevance and contextuality of research, or what we also call the data that we generate from within specific contexts that become, and that from where we use the new information that we are generating to deal with seminal questions that we are researching are seminal. Another perspective that I want to share comes from, and this is about the African decolonial scholarship, comes from the famous article of Immanuel Kant, those of you who have studied philosophy, and his little article on what is enlightenment from 1782 or 83, I think. What is very helpful there is that he basically refracted the philosophical meta-theorizings of his time, and there's still too much of that also going around in this world, by asking what are the empirical data and the empirical aspects of all kinds of philosophizing. And in order, in the global and in his world, also the colonizing epistemics of his time, he referred to this ancient Greek poem or Latin poem about the sapere aude, to think for yourself. So it's this thinking, the scholarly imagination, making a substantial contribution. Then the African decolonial scholarship, we've had quite a number of summer schools, winter schools over the last decade. But last year, when I organized the annual postgraduate conference, where we had 40 papers of masters and students reading papers, and the topic related to, it was the humanities and social sciences, conceptually relevant research in African context. About 20% of the 40 articles dealt with decoloniality and so on. And I asked myself, the other 80%, they were not pre-decolonial. They're because they're dealing with issues that are dealt with and engaged in decolonial scholarship. So, for want of a better word, we started to talk about the post-decolonial. And what is the difference? Decolonial scholarship primarily analyzes the existing scholarship that we have inherited from the past. I call it the scholarship of the past present. So it is here. And there are many tools in the philosophies of the world that people have developed to analyze that, to historicize whatever is not relevant at all, and to really look at what is relevant, what need to be built on and further developed in our own context and for the benefit of future generations. So the decolonial scholarship mainly deals with the past-present, the epistemic past-present of the knowledge as it stands, as we learn it and teach it. And you can say the substance of knowledge. Then the post-decolonial, or however we want to call it in future, if we talk about considering how we accommodate the engagement of the vestiges and the histories of colonizing and colonization, then we have to think about the present future of the humanities. In other words, as we have experienced last year, the kind of research currently being done with a future focus, the future-facing humanities is important for us in terms of the intergenerational future that we want to see, how we want to contribute and also steer our scholarship. Then, colleagues, I'm not going to say anything about these thematizations because that is seminal to our experiences of epistemic colonization and also epistemic decolonization or post-decoloniality, epistemically, how we then think in terms of our own African rootedness of our epistemics. And the modern Africa, We are trying to really be so inclusive, and Prof, you know, I also work in what we are calling transdisciplinary work, and there are different understandings of that, but transdisciplinary work also includes the integration of African indigenous knowledge systems into our teaching and writing. But this is not done by colonizers. This is not done by cynical philosophers from the West. This is done by us. And then to really accommodate and recognize and affirm what we have as our roots, ancient roots, on the African continent. Then, and you can think of what you've read and what you have studied and so on. You know, Ngugi wa Thiong'o's very famous book on, you know, basically the colonizing of the mind, that dealt with languages and so on, and why it is important to develop indigenous languages on the African continent. And you have had some visiting scholars in that regard. Part of the Humanities Institute is a very substantial project that we call the intellectualizing of indigenous knowledges in South Africa. And the main and the most advanced at the moment are those dealing with isiXhosa and isiZulu and with Tswana. So those are the most advanced. There are projects in all of them. And then, you know, you can think about what it means to be free. And South Africa very belatedly joined the free world in 1994. What does it mean to have access, to be competitive internationally in terms of the knowledge domain and make contributions and apply for scholarship and scholarship funding internationally, to be reckoned as a peer, as an equal, and in terms of how we form part of the global humanity which we are, and on the other hand also to recognize, as one of our previous speakers have mentioned, the great diversity on the African continent as an important tool for knowledge enhancement and advancement, because there are so many different voices that make constructive contributions. And then obviously the big question, you know, all of us in some way or another were educated in colonizing education systems. And I have learned here in the Caribbean or in Jamaica, you've got notions of the traditional schooling system and similar, and non-traditional and so on. Traditional meaning people who were subjected to what we in South Africa under apartheid, but also going back to colonial times where we have had similar experiences, or what people call the Bantustan, you know, education system. So what does it mean to be free and really to be counted and to have an equal opportunity education system? And post-apartheid, our education ministry played a tremendous role in really bringing equity and equality across the disciplines, the associations, and also across the different curricula and syllabi and so on. So education, looking at history. History, unfortunately, we have to rewrite in many different ways. And I will tell you, the easy truth about history is that even where some of our colleagues in the historians in the global south, write our histories, they still do it from lenses and points of view and perspectives from the global north. And that is problematic, because we need to look at and include all the forms of resistance histories, all the forms, and we do not have, Prof. Kumalo is working in that area. I've done some 22 decades ago, I've done a similar kind of work. It's hard work. And you know, when you're encountering the archives that were established for the benefit of colonization, it is difficult to say, so what here, even though these were not for us, what is here that we can make use of for our new and renewed histories and so on. And obviously then also the big questions about politics. How do we organize ourselves? We are not organized anymore by colonizing epistemics, colonizing knowledge, colonizing power holders. And that's a big difference also that I draw between decolonial and post-decolonial, or whatever we want to call it, because decolonial work with the power knowledge in the systems, analyze it. That's the difficult work. That's what some scholars have called the grey work in the archives, to really understand what needs to be done. The power knowledge, but the post-decolonial, the future-facing epistemics look at the knowledge power. In other words, what and how do we develop knowledge now, and with a view to future intergenerational knowledge development on the African continent as we take it from there. Finally, let me make two brief points. I have some slides here. You can look at that. In 2016, shortly after I ended my deanship, I took a sabbatical. And as part of the sabbatical, I wanted books that were not available in South Africa, so I ordered them through Amazon. And then after, and they were quite helpful, 3 or 4 books. About a week after I ordered them, I got an email on my email system saying, if you like this book, you will also like this book. I said to colleagues, hey, who's reading my emails here? There's some little man somewhere down the line that's, intercepting you. I said, no, those are the algorithms. So that was my first experience of the algorithms. And subsequently, while I was on sabbatical and I got these messages, I ordered another 2. They were quite helpful to order another 2 from Amazon. But that is where, in terms of my work during that sabbatical, I asked this question coming from the very important article, from the famous French philosopher Michel Foucault, The Subject and Power, where he talks about the 3 dimensions of power. And I thought, can we maybe think about these 3 dimensions of power in terms of knowledge? And actually, as I did my research, I found when he started off at the Collège de France as a professor in the early 70s, he actually worked with this notion of knowledge power. But because he was doing this difficult work of the presence of the past in knowledge systems, he started to focus on power knowledge. So I thought we must start to revive this thinking about knowledge power, because all forms of knowledge give all kinds of power that you want. So the 3 notions, or the 3 dimensions: firstly, the subjective capacity. In other words, every scholar, every person on this planet, we have inherited traits, we have skills, and so on, but we also have the ability to improve our own capacity and our own capabilities. And it is very important to really embrace that. Now that I get older, the machines are reading who I am and my ID number and age and so on. I get messages about, what it means to one day retire and so on. And one of the main things that they are saying is, don't stop reading, don't stop learning. I said, no, I don't have a problem with that. I like that. But this is, so subjective capacity building, subjective capabilities. And I do a few quotes there that you might find helpful. So the subjective side is very important. Then communication. Now we're talking about communication in terms of epistemic communication, knowledge communication as scholars. How do we conceptualize and communicate in scholarly ways with fellow scholars? And that is what we ultimately learn through our honors and masters, but especially at the PhD level, where we started to gain our own voice as scholars. And how do we as individual scholars make that subjective communication and develop our own communication in terms of our disciplinary fields and areas of specialization. And then subjective knowledge power. Foucault had, you can say, the subject of power knowledge, analyzing. So I said, okay, if we now say subject of knowledge power, well, how can we think about that? And so ultimately, as pupils at school, we are learning many things, and that gives us some kind of power. The first principle of power is to be in control of your own well-being as far as you can. So your own well-being, health-wise, socially, also about economically, and so on. And then obviously the big question about all of these dimensions. What kind of community do we form part of? And whenever we talk about, Afrocentric scholarship, we think kind of, what some people have coined or labeled primitivism. It's something that we should ban, and there's so many scholarship coming from the African continent say, listen, and it's the same. Primitivism is my equivalent to Edward Said's notion of Orientalism. So people who are doing this, in the same criticism of Edward Said of Orientalizing the East, primitivizing Africa, that's my equivalent of Said's critique. So that must be banished, and because we're not there, we were never there. But that's a different story that I will not engage now. It's a long story. Colleagues, then finally, about our human and social sciences, I shall not say much about this, but I am really blessed as the chair of the Humanities Institute with so many humanities scholars, social scientists, and making contributions through our publication systems and so on. And we will talk about also collaborating on research projects and seminal research project topics and areas of focus that we want scholarship and on. So maybe, and I actually said it earlier this year at a academic professors and academic meetings of research meeting, maybe for future references we may start to talk about the Ubuntu sciences. I don't want this to be formalized because then we lose what Ubuntu sciences mean. And there's a lot of theorizing and intellectualizing of this notion of Ubuntu. And before I started Alternation, I was actually thinking of starting the journal calling it Ubuntu, or maybe just Ntu, because Ntu means human, so because it's about us, it's about being human. And and thinking then further about what we are doing in terms of decolonial scholarship, decolonial research, post-decolonial labor, and so on, where we try to analyze the presence of the past, the power knowledge of the past, where we want to say some of these things we don't need anymore, we don't want it, we want to intellectually disengage that, push it back into where it belongs in history. I was thinking, and I proposed that we then call the Ubuntu sciences from decolonial and post-decolonial perspectives the critical Ubuntu sciences, because the critical Ubuntu sciences means precisely to analyze and to understand, you can say, what is not acceptable with regard to who we are as human beings, especially if we think about us as human beings from Africa, and doing our work and our research from African perspectives, initiatives, ideas, insights, and doing it with our communities, involving them in our research projects as equals in knowledge creation and contribution, and ultimately the research and the scholarship is created not only with our communities, but also by our communities, because we become the agents and our participants become the agents. So doing our research, generating and building our scholarship with, by, from, and for our African communities. Colleagues, while I have ended my presentation, but I want to make a suggestion. So, while we had all the esteemed colleagues doing the brief introductions a little earlier, I was wondering whether we shouldn't start an annual lecture that is born out of our quest for African scholarship. And I was thinking one could call it something like the Global African Scholarship Annual Lecture, something like that. And I thought, let me mention it. This was what I was thinking about as I was sitting here. And that we could maybe take it up. I will discuss it with our DVC. I don't want to twist his arm, but I think he might, Prof, if you're listening, yeah, so he might approve and support. But I think it makes sense, because there's a huge opportunity for us to make formative, innovative contributions through our opportunities that exist in creating, generating African scholarship globally. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Professor Smith. You're proposing that we contemplate the creation of future opportunities for collaborative reflection, and I'm sure that this is something that Principal DCP DCP Paul, and other colleagues would be prepared to consider. The question of how we create knowledge and how we, or might I say, the epistemological question of how we understand our contexts and our reality, and use that to inform our modes of engagement and create solutions to respond to the disturbing and debilitating realities is really the purpose of a university. University not only creates opportunities for the acquisition of skills. Indeed, it is my view that it is less about the acquisition of skills and more about the acquisition of the capacity to think critically. That is the foundation of a university. And once those critical thinking skills have been acquired, then a person can apply themselves to solve just about any problem. So it is indeed a journey that we should take. There's also the question of how we understand previous attempts or previous editions of knowledge creation and apply them to the context of our time. So I want to thank you for your reflection, sir. And we now open the floor for comments and questions in response to the presentation. There should be a mic somewhere, but yes, there's a mic at the back. So we welcome comments, questions, observations, reflections. You could just tell us your name as you go. Tell us your name, your institution, and then make your comment or pose your question.
Okay, my name is Leroy Paul from the International University of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. Prof. Smith, let me thank you for such an enlightening presentation. Being a part of the doctoral group We have benefited immensely from your presentations over the past 6 or 7 months. But I know you've been here just for a very short time. But what gaps have you recognized so far in the Jamaican education context? And how do you think those could be resolved?
So for the benefit of the audience online, the question is, what gaps have been observed in the Jamaican education context, and how would you address those? You want to take the mic, Prof? And
yes, thank you. I think this is a very, very important question. Is it on?
May I invite you to take the podium?
Because
Prof. Smith?
it is a question.
I think this mic works better.
It is a question that I think we should not say only Jamaicans are asking, but it's a question that, and not only the countries from the global south are asking, but I think from humanities and social sciences perspective, it is a question that all of us across the globe, whether you're from London or from Manchester or Edinburgh or Berlin or Toronto or Sydney, Australia, well, it doesn't matter. This is an important question that we should ask, and ask it collectively and interactively, you know. So with regard to the just my brief interactions yesterday and today, I think the kind of gaps and questions that I'm raising about South Africa, about and for us and with our communities on the African continent resonates with all the colleagues that we've met yesterday and today. So I think we have a similar challenge here. Thank you. So let me just say that I know you want to say, okay, this is the one and so on. We can talk further, but that is part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? There is a...
Thank you, Professor. That was a very stimulating and informative address. My name is the Reverend Dr. Amelia Coe-Butler from the Council for World Mission based in Singapore, but with students currently at UKZN, so delighted to hear what is your learning from South Africa. I'm here with 9 students from around the world, and we have been in exchange thinking about some of the things that you've been talking about, but from a very practical, on-the-ground level. You've neatly summarised interest in post-colonial, decolonial and post-decolonial challenges in relation to education systems, and that's been a big topic of our conversation as we've been discussing from different parts of the world. So my question is also in relation to the increase of digitalisation, global education and the prospect of neo-colonialism in education based on technological access. I'm conscious when I was visiting in South Africa earlier this year, we experienced days at a time of load shedding when people didn't have access to technology. So I'm asking, what are the safeguards we need to attend to in order to avoid the traps of neocolonialism, of knowledge and ideas, and even things like access?
Thank you so much. It's a very, very important question and something that we've had many presentations on, and I've been thinking and writing about it. Actually, you will find some of my references from my own work that I did with a PhD student also there from a few years ago. Yes, you know, this year we have our National Research Foundation has recently released a document on the ethics of using artificial intelligence in research and also in education. And we have had many groups reflecting on that. Our own policy on the use of artificial intelligence at the moment is being reviewed by the different schools in the college. So I think hopefully by middle next year we will also have our locally produced policy document actually precisely on what digital media, digital technologies, and also on artificial intelligence. Yes, we published quite a number of studies on the fact that people could not equally access digital technology as it became available. And what we are trying to do is guard against the fact that there are so many, well, not too many, but there are some naysayers about artificial intelligence. So it is with us. We've expected it since the War of the World in the early 1900s, you know, by Huxley and so on. So we are there now. And in our policy document presentation, one of the committee members, Professor Naina Amin from Education, said from between today and 3 years from now, higher education globally will be different. So it resonates with what we are engaging at the moment. Let me make two comments, two points further. In the different presentations that I've arranged for the doctoral students in the college and also for staff, and we will continue with that, I've tried to identify from the people who know the software, you know, what kind of programs are maybe most helpful. And there's a lot of information about that. But in terms of the red light that you are signing there, if you use a program like Illicit AI, for example, which is very helpful, especially for PhD levels, where you say, I problematize in a particular kind of, you know, focuses or aspects of the problem, because Illicit AI, if you say cover the last 5 years of international publications on this topic, it provides you with a thematizing of from. And there I find it, you know, enlightening, because it breaks a bit of the box in terms of which we operate and function. But the red lights are that the scholarship that it accesses are still not from us. So that is where the African scholarship come from. So if 80% of Illicit AI accesses on that topic scholarship from Africa, how will the thematization be different? So we're working on in that direction. Yeah.
Yes, please, yes.
Thank you very much again, sir, for another stimulating discussion. Just following up on the AI discussion, I was thinking in terms of the global convergence on epistemic roots, the difference, how do we develop ethical guidelines for the development and use of AI? Not only the use of AI in research, but rather the coding, the machine learning, and the use of it, which you referred to in the algorithm example.
Yes, I think maybe more important question that scholars working in AI and utilizing, starting to see how we can use it also in the classroom, in not only tertiary, but maybe primary and secondary school and so on, has been the integrity of the scholarship that we produce. And that's a bit different from just values and ethics. Ethics and values are always there. And I've followed, because my wife is an artist, and much of the artificial intelligence have been tried out and developed with regard to art, you know, combining art and generating art pieces that's never even existed before and so on. So the main point there that I have heard from years ago that artists are saying is that, you know, a machine can generate the art piece, but if I as an artist paint something, and I put my name beneath it. It is something that comes from my creative abilities, my creative understanding, my creative assessment, and so on. So for some time, at least, the people who know will be able to detect, and our software will detect what is original and what is coming from machine learning and so on. So at least for a time, but then as the discussion has also included colleagues traditionally very strong in humanities and social sciences research, every main aspect of the PhD, you can basically ask questions about the originality of the researcher. And I know Professor Paulo Zulu, who is already over 83, told me his birthday was 4 months ago, 83, told me that for him, the key aspect of original scholarship, and whether AI is there or not, is centered in the problem. So how does the researcher or the student understand the problem for which knowledge has to be generated or data to be generated to be optimum towards providing a solution to the problem that you are raising. So, but then you can say the same kind of things about theorizing, conceptualizing, the methodology, how we develop the language about talking about our methodologies, and as I've pointed out, synthesizing of knowledge. You know, I've looked at some of the most powerful AI programs, synthesizing of knowledge, and it's really maybe at the moment still a bit rough. So maybe a year or 3 from now it will become much more less detectable. But I think that if you've had students that plagiarize, you know, from books in the old system, and they rewrite a paragraph, you know, when you read an article or a scholarship, a student's essay, you get to the paragraph, the tone has changed. So if you know how, as a teacher, you know, detect plagiarism, then you also see that, you know, if people now just cut and paste, synthesizing from what becomes more difficult if the machine is writing the whole book or the whole thesis. So I have not encountered that, but I think in the next year or 2 I will have to deal with that. So yeah, thanks. Yes, Prof.
So, please.
Yes. So thanks for the talk, Prof. My name is Dr. Michael Barnett. I teach here from the Faculty of Social Sciences, and I say greetings as well to everyone here from Humanities, Arts and Humanities faculty, but I am somebody who sees the need to interface, obviously, you know, social sciences with humanities and not make a broad separation. So I actually teach the African Diaspora Studies course over in Sociology Department, and what I have found is over the years that here in Jamaica, I can't speak for the wider Caribbean, but I'm sure it applies, that we are still dealing with a situation of the decolonial phase. We haven't reached the post-decolonial because we still have the project of decolonizing our education system from, you know, primary school, secondary school up. It's still a work in progress. And on that topic, you know, the challenge, I think, in decolonizing the education system is to make Caribbean history actually mandatory for our high school students, because that's not yet the case. So that persons, when they come into history at least, that is one area of humanities, can engage in a critical perspective on the world around us and not basically be subjected only to a Eurocentrically biased knowledge system without also getting that balance. So that's still a work in progress. But very importantly as well, I think that we should look at a summit in terms of discussing Afrocentric paradigms in our knowledge system, our educational system, and not maybe just a one-off lecture, but we give thanks for this interface. And I am proposing the Caribbean region, as well as Africa and the US, because we mustn't leave out the fact that the US has so many thriving, African and African diaspora studies programs, so we shouldn't leave that part of the globe out of the picture. And in a nutshell, the other thing is with the AI discussion, so I am seeing firsthand, as a lecturer, hands-on, the onslaught, really, of AI-manufactured essays coming my way. Even as I speak, I've just been grading a few essays. What it has done, in my opinion, is it basically derails this critical thinking that we are trying to instill. It's a real impediment to critical thinking, and I think we have to think very seriously as educators, if nothing else, about how we can counteract this dependence on AI. And I just did a lecture to the students that you has an inherent bias when you draw for AI, because as you point out, much of the Afrocentric materials haven't really permeated the AI realm. So I can see an essay, even without looking at the AI index, I know that the influence is definitely not Afrocentric because of the sources that immediately come to the surface. I can tell by the whole, the taste of the essay, that is AI manufactured essay. So it's a real problem that we have to deal with. Give thanks.
Prof, I can only agree with you. From our modest attempt, we have founded a journal, as mentioned, in 1994 to generate this African-rooted scholarship. It's a continuing journey. And also the African Scholarship Book Series in 2020. So we welcome more and more of that as possible, and I support many, and I've supported many establishing of journals and so on. And I totally agree. We do need these, let me say, I don't want to say nationalistic, but nation-rooted histories, that we'd understand what we're dealing with. And as I mentioned, in terms of knowledge and how we are conditioned and normalized in terms of just accepting things, your point of critique is well taken. That is what we as humanities scholars, critical Ubuntu sciences, really have to engage, and also with the advent of AI and so on. So, Prof, you have a fellow traveler. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Said. Maybe just to say a few words, adding to what Prof. Smith has said, and I'm quite honored to see Dr. Bennett there. When I came here for the first time 10 years ago, I got his book on Rastafari, and so it's wonderful to be here and to still see that he's here doing this kind of work. Maybe to just say that one of the motto of the University of KwaZulu-Natal and its mission, which has been there at least for the last decade, has been we see ourselves as wanting to become the premier university of African scholarship. And that's what we've been. And for the past 10 years, we've been working hard to try and understand what does it mean to be a world-class university that has got science, it's got the histories, it's got all sorts of disciplines, but it is rooted in the African context. And it seeks to build its knowledge within the context of being in Africa and doing it for the benefit of Africa and also for the benefit of the world from an African perspective. And first class world-class knowledge, not just being concerned maybe only, and the thinking that all that is African is all historical. I think we also miss a point there. It's not just about going back to history. Yes, there is history. We value history. We build on it and all that. But the current situation where we find ourselves require that we pick up the values that have always been there, that African people live with even today, and infuse those into the education and the knowledge that we have today. And it's relevant. African values and knowledge themselves are available and important for today as people begin to explore and produce new knowledge. And one of those principles, as Professor Smith was saying, mentioning Ubuntu all the time, the question that one has to be asking all the time, whose knowledge are we dealing with? And for whose benefit is this knowledge? And who participates not only in the consumption of this knowledge, but even in the production of this knowledge and propagation of this knowledge. And one of the values of being African is that whatever we do as a community. We do it together, and it's for the benefit for at least all of us, and not for some individuals to shine out of the knowledge that has been produced. And so there is a sense of communalism that is injected into the process of producing knowledge, and even for the benefit that people may receive. Any knowledge that uplifts and benefits a minority leaving behind the majority is not the kind of knowledge that should be celebrated in an African context. The African context needs to detest, and in fact it does in many ways, that kind of knowledge that only uplifts, because it's actually elitism. And African knowledge should not be emphasizing any form of elitism, but inclusivity. All of us. It belongs to us. It must be life-giving to all of us, not to a few, and it shouldn't leave others behind. So African scholarship has to have those values on which it is built. I'm just wanting to add in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So we'll have our last comment or question.
My name is Winnie Anderson Brown, and I'm a proud graduate of this institution. 2 times, yes. My question, I'll ask a question before I make a comment. The question is, how do we bridge that gap between what is happening in the real world and what is happening in education? That's the question, and I want you to keep that question in mind. Every time I attend a business forum, I hear about education and I'm embarrassed. Let me tell you the story. I'm not going to tell you the story. Anybody heard of Rip Van Winkle? Anybody remembers? Okay, for those who may never know this, who may have, the young people who may have not heard that story, just remember that this man woke up after 20 years. Okay? He drank something and he woke up after 20 years. And this was said at a forum I attended. If Rip Van Winkle woke up today, the only thing that he could recognize is, finish it, the education system. And you may notice that I was squirming and turning when I heard about this AI and plagiarism. The only thing that educators can do is to get with it. Just like in 1993, when the internet was made available to the general public and educators had to learn how to use the internet and teach their students how to use it ethically. That's the only way we can manage with AI. Yes, listen, What I'm saying is this. It is different when OpenAI released ChatGPT to the general public November 13, 2022. You know what happened? The world changed. Plagiarism is a different thing because if you understand, I'm a chatbot coach. I teach people how to use it because I jumped in early. Listen. All we can do, make sure we understand it ourselves. Because a student, a wise student, using artificial intelligence, how are you going to, after I train my chatbot to write like me, to use my diction, and they have really misrepresented students who did not cheat because it is hard to tell. So the only thing to do is to understand it. And guess what? This morning, I got information that OpenAI released something new for educators because they realize that the educators are behind. Pardon me, sorry for preaching.
Thank you. I think you have led us down the path to the answer to your question. You have given much on which we are to ponder. I'm going to ask Prof. Kawa to raise his question. There's a question at the back. And this would be indeed the final question, not shutting down the reflection, but we can continue after we close.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be brief. Afrocentric, developing Afrocentric knowledge, I think will require or will benefit from structured efforts, structured national efforts. And I do know that in South Africa you have put together some mechanisms of enhancing research, scholarship, interactions among scholars, indigenous people, etc., etc. Could you comment briefly on the success and challenges that you would have faced in that regard?
Yes, thank you for the question. Colleagues, you know, the notion of Afrocentricity has this notion of the center and the periphery. So in colonization, the colonizing power was at the center. Everything served colonization. And I do not want to go into detail, but the indigenous peoples of the world were on the periphery of the societies and how colonization and settler colonization and so on was established the world over, and also in the knowledge domain and the education domain. So everything that served the king or the queen in Europe or the chancellor or whatever, that was seminal. And every administrator, every policeman, every soldier, every clerk, every business served king and queen and country and chancellor and whoever in Europe. So independence in the global south meant the people who voted for a democratic constitution, whatever the democratic constitution is, these people are at the center. We are at the center of power, so we must wake up to this challenge. But that, or let me say, as one student said to a visiting prof about last year in a lecture, "Prof, you are afraid of power." You know, we have the power, we have the initiatives, so we need to take the initiatives and innovate and develop, and we are free to do that, and so on. So we are in the center, and we are peripheralizing in the process. Politically, to a large degree, we are independent. The question is, how are we really centralizing African scholarship in our countries, in the global south, and so on, and impacting also scholarship about humanity, the future of humanity, related also to the challenges related to environmental degradation and related challenges. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Well, this brings our evening to a close, and it has been a really beautiful experience. Leaves me now to call on Dr. Joan Reid to bring us the vote of thanks. She has a lot for which to be thankful on behalf of all of us, so please come, Dr. Joan.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am happy to have been part of this one-of-a-kind collaborative effort. Now, I must express sincere gratitude to all our guests. Professor Smith, your speech was thought-provoking. You have caused us to start thinking about our past, our present, and the future. Where is all of that taking us? I also thank Dr. Benjamin, who has looked at or given us insights into the development of tertiary education, and that's part of the future for development, so we appreciate that. But how could all of this have taken place without the UWI's team? A big thank you to Pro Vice Chancellor for Global Affairs, Ms. Sandra Maynard, for guiding this process from its inception, ensuring everyone was on board. Thank you so much. Professor Canute Thompson, Pro Vice Chancellor, he has been the link making this a success. Thank you so much. Professor Roderick Hewitt, President of IUC, he has been the team leader. He worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring the success of this program. And for Professor Kumalo, for having brought the team together, and for your inputs. But how could all of this happen, though, without the dedicated team of persons at the UWI? Dr. Tomlin Paul, Dr. Shakira Maxwell, Mrs. Nikisha Grant, Dr. Alison Fong, Miss Lisa Hamilton Brathwaite, Dr. Donovan Stanbury, Mr. Jonathan Archie, Mr. Sean Stevens, the UWI Marketing and Communication Team, the Mono Campus Marketing Team, UWITV, the UWI Estate Professional Management Department, and the Office of the Director of Campus Security. We thank you. Thank you so much for being efficient and organized. We respect the roles you have played in this event to make it possible, and so for that, we are honored. Dr. Maxwell, thank you so much for those nudges that awakened a spirit of constancy in getting each detail in place. And Ms. Spence, for sticking with me to get it done. Thank you very much. We appreciate this afternoon's participants. Professor Hutton should have given the introduction of the guest presenter. Lastly, but by no means least, I'm not sure if the first secretary of the South African High Commission is here. Reverend Amelia Butler, we thank you for bringing your team. Thank you so very much for gracing us with your presence. Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson, thank you so much for being here. And our Chancellor, Ambassador Aluna Sambo, we appreciate you. And for everybody, you have been such an engaging audience. We appreciate that. Thank you so very much for making this afternoon a success. It has been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Dr. June, it leaves me then with a distinct pleasure of thanking Dr. Joan Reed for all she has done, all those phone calls to Dr. Maxwell and her team, and her phone calls and emails to other people, including me, apologizing for calling so early, but nonetheless proceeding to make known her request. These are the fruits of your work. Thank you, Dr. Joan. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.